Hi, and welcome to Reading Babylon.
I'm Cece.
And I'm Lisa. And this is episode number 2.
Oh, we have episode numbers. Wow. Okay, so this week we thought we'd do something a little bit different. We both have TV shows that we were absolutely in love with. Everyone does. But the shows were canceled sooner than we would have liked. And I personally have always found it strange that the entertainment industry hasn't just already come to the decision that some of these shows can be continued in other formats. For instance, as books or even series of books. So we thought we would run down a list of our favorite shows that we think would be ideal candidates for being turned into novel series. So,
what's your first one?
Well, you go first. I went first last time.
Okay. My first one is a show called The Riches.
Oh gosh, she was so obsessed with that show.
I love The Riches. It was a show about this gypsy traveler family who accidentally ran another family off the road and killed them all.
Oops.
Oops. And never people to allow anything to go to waste. They saw that from the car and all their accoutrements, that family had some money, so they found their house. And at first, they were just going to strip the house and go. But circumstances happened that they were able to just replace the family. And the show was about this ongoing con, which was their ultimate con, as well as the spiritual and psychic angst of literally stepping into somebody else's life and how they started to relate to those people.
Plus, they were also still like under threat from their clan because they were fleeing or something.
Yeah, they didn't really want to take part in the major scams that their clan was running at the time, so they were also on the run from those people, and that's how they ended up in the accident that killed the family. Ultimately, the ending of the show was really unsatisfactory because they just cut it off, and there was so much more story there to tell. They had begun to change in all sorts of ways, but their old life kept clawing at them. And the parts of themselves that loved their old life, they caused them to sabotage themselves at times. So if there were the Riches novels, I would buy them. I would love to have that story continued for me.
I don't know. I think if it became a series of books, I would check out at least the first book.
Mm-hmm.
The show never really grabbed me like that, but I don't know. I feel like the story could go some interesting places.
Yeah.
Okay, so my first one, my list has a speculative fiction bent because I have a speculative fiction bent, so it was hard to keep it out of my list. So my first television series is Charlie Jade. This was actually a Canadian television series. It was broadcast in Canada, I think, in 2005, and then in the U.S. on the Sci-Fi Channel in 2008. It was about the titular character, Charlie Jade. He accidentally ends up in a parallel universe. His Earth is terrible. There's crime, there's poverty, there's a shortage of food and also water. And the penalty for murder, I think, was involuntary organ donation. Mm. So it is like a really, really
Ouch.
bad place to be. Then there was kind of like this utopian Earth where we get everything right, that he also plays a role in this story because we're following really 3 different Earths. And then there's our Earth, which is kind of right in between the two, where Charlie ends up because of an accident. And at first, he doesn't know what happened. He doesn't understand where he is or why or how he came there. And eventually, there starts to unravel a corporate conspiracy about a plot to steal all the water from the utopian Earth and bring it back to Charlie's original Earth. And we find out that in order to do that, they would have to build a bridge that would destroy our Earth. So there was a lot going on, and the show only lasted 1 season. And at the end of that season, Charlie had come up with a plan. Charlie and kind of his main antagonist, who is another character who is flipping back and forth between Earths, come up with a plan to try to save all 3 Earths. And so when the series ends, Charlie and this other guy are kind of like holding the universes together.
Oh.
And there's also this other verse that we would see into sometimes that was populated by people who seemingly have the ability to travel between verses at will, and they had their own agenda. They're like shadow men in the series, so we don't we don't ever interact with them. We just see them in the background sometimes, and we don't know who they are or what they wanted, what their intentions were. So there were still a lot of places for this story to go. I think part of the reason it was canceled because people thought it was really complicated. In fact, they even did an episode that was like a story so far episode. It wasn't that complicated. Like, if you watch each episode, I feel like maybe if you missed an episode, you would not understand everything that was going on. But there were even like visual cues. Each universe has a slightly different hue. So you knew where you were located because...
I didn't see all of that in Charlie J. I only watched a few episodes.
Yeah.
And I didn't watch them consecutively, so I was completely...
Yeah, you're never going to get it if you watch them out of order. Yeah. But there was just so much story to tell. This was a show that definitely had a lot of potential, and it was just cut off way too soon.
Was it cut off in Canada after one season?
Yeah.
Or did we only get one season?
It was also cut off in Canada. And in fact, when the Sci-Fi Channel first started broadcasting it, it came on like Friday nights, which is already like not a great time slot. But after the first 2 episodes, they actually moved it to like 1, 2 in the morning on like a Tuesday or something. Watch it.
Yes.
And I did stay up late to watch it. Maybe not the best show to watch when you're already tired, but I still really enjoyed it. It's actually on Netflix now if anyone wants to check it out and see if you agree with me that maybe it should be made into a series of books.
My next one, I love Joan of Arcadia.
That was a really good show.
That was an excellent show that was killed for no apparent reason. Basically, this girl has an encounter with God, and thereafter, God sends her on little missions. And she either does them or doesn't do them, but in the process of deciding whether or not to do them, or eventually she really does everything God asked her to.
It is God.
It is God. And she even said, if you ask me, I'm going to do it. But she has all sorts of surprising interactions with people, and we start to see how chains of events that are seemingly unrelated occur in all our lives, and how we are of service to one another in various ways. It was a really great show. I think it was really the show that Touched by an Angel wanted to be.
I always thought Touched by an Angel was a little campy.
It was,
and I like the tone that Joan of Arcadia
set. It was real. I mean, at one point, Joan ends up in a mental hospital because she becomes convinced that, she's not seeing God and God's not talking to her and telling her to do things. And she has one of my favorite episodes is where she breaks up with God. She literally says to him, "It's not you, it's me. I'm nuts."
Well, part of the reason she thought she was crazy, though, is that God always appeared to her in a different guise. So it could be a bus driver, it could be the school custodian, it could be the person behind the counter at a drugstore, and suddenly this person is just starts talking to her about, some sort of existential something.
Yeah.
And that's when she realizes it's God.
Yeah. But when it was cut off, literally everything was evolving. She had a brother that was in a wheelchair, and God told her, "Don't worry about it. Your brother is going to dance at his wedding."
It wasn't God. Remember, it was a psychic.
Oh, that's right. That wasn't God.
Yeah. She was at a police station for some reason, and the psychic was there to talk to someone, and the psychic said he was going to dance at his wedding. Yeah. Oh, my laptop's making noises. Okay.
I was like, what now? But the way it ended... We're just a tiny little bit bootleg. Okay, a little bit, but it's okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say exactly what I said before and edit that out and then join it back together.
Oh, she knows how to do that because I don't.
Not yet, but I'm going to look it up. So the way it ended, it just stopped in the middle of a season.
And there was an evil leaper, remember?
Yes, there was.
Played by Wentworth Miller.
Yes, there was.
He was another...
Well, let's not call him an evil leaper because that's Quantum Leap.
Right, but that kind of character. He played that role. He was Joan's equal and opposite.
Yes, so there was another guy we found out in that season who was Joan, but, was batting for the other team. And
he used to talk to God, and then he got mad at God.
Yeah.
He broke up with God and
he
stayed
broke
broken
God.
up.
Yeah. He didn't just break up with God and just try to be neutral. He went to the other team. And he was actively starting to work against Joan. And they just cut us off, and there was nothing left.
Yeah, and I feel like that was really great conflict.
Yeah. It brought in a whole nother level of conflict that I was really enjoying.
And the show was replaced by Ghost Whisperer, which
Yeah.
I refused to watch just as a protest because I love Jonah Arcadia so much. And a network executive at the time, because this was on CBS, said that talking to ghosts skews younger than talking to God. And I'm like, that's a dumb reason to cancel a show.
That was a hit, by the way. It wasn't like it was just this obscure show that five people watched
Yeah, it was a good
obsessively.
show for a Friday night, I thought.
Yeah, it was a brilliant show. I loved it. The writing was brilliant. And I would love to see what happened with Joan and the Evil Leaper and how Joan's life progressed, as God's little handmaiden on Earth. And I wanted to see whether or not her brother danced at his wedding. I loved her brother.
Yeah. I always wanted to know what happened with that.
That was John Ritter's son, because there was the funniest episode where he got this girlfriend. And she lived in a walk-up, and he was in a wheelchair. And they had decided that tonight was the night.
They had to work for it.
And they sure did.
They earned it.
They earned every minute of that. But she had to get him upstairs.
But see, we still have like these really fond memories of the show.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine we're the only ones, unless we're just that weird. But I totally agree with this one. Jonah Arcadia.
You're up.
Okay, mine, this is an oddball choice, because I'm pretty sure this show was canceled because I was the only person watching it. It is called 3 Moons Over Milford, and it aired on ABC Family. So the setup is that the moon was struck by a meteor, and it fractures into 3 pieces, thus the 3 moons. And the pieces are hurtling towards Earth, and so all life on Earth is going to be destroyed. And it's about the people in a town called Milford, Milford, Vermont, who are basically have kind of given over almost to a type of hedonism. I mean, nothing destructive, because the show was like kind of comedic. But they call like kind of just living your dreams or whatever because of what happened with the moons, going 3 moons. And so I always thought it was cute that they coined that little phrase. And it follows this woman named Laura, whose personal life fell apart around the same time the moon fell apart, because her husband, first he moved into a local park and was living in a tent. Whoa. And it becomes some sort of ascetic. And then
this is before the moon.
No, right out because of the moons. And then he leaves town altogether, and then the company they worked for, which was a big successful tech company, thought he stole some money, and because her house was owned by the company, she lost her house. Her husband's gone. She has no job. Her daughter accidentally helped burn down the local high school.
Oops.
And her teenage son is dating a much older woman who has no idea he's a teenager.
Oh.
Because he's also some sort of computer genius, so when they started talking tech, she had no clue that he was only a teenager. And in the midst of all of this, of course, there's a budding romance. And when the show ended, so she's just starting to get her life together. She got a job. It's like her and the only other sane person in the town, who's the guy she had started dating. And who shows up on her door? Her husband.
Of course.
Who had been off like living in the mountains or something. And the show's strength was really the characters. They were cute. They were charming. The town felt very much like Stars Hollow on Gilmore Girls, where everyone is a personality. And I feel like that would play out really great in a book, just as well as it did on television. I don't think...
I can see it.
It's not dependent upon the medium, because these characters were just really charming, really cute. The daughter actually burned down the school. Well, she didn't really. It was another girl, but she was trying to participate in a ritual that witches all over the earth were trying to do to restore the moon. So she thought if they all cast this spell at the same time all around the world, they could restore the moon. Unfortunately, the ritual involved copious amounts of candles. And that is how the school burned down. So it was quirky little things like that would be fun to read about, I think, as they were to watch on television. So I would definitely make that one a candidate.
Wow, you were the only one. I never even
Yeah,
heard of that
it was
show.
just me, so I can't even blame them for canceling it. I mean, they might as well have started each episode with, "Hey, Cece."
You're going to like this one.
So, that was my second one.
Okay, well, my number 3. Now, I'm a little embarrassed, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Because, my ego is strong. I can take being embarrassed. It's called America Unearthed.
No!
I watched every episode of this madness.
No! Oh, no, I'm embarrassed. Oh, no.
Oh, yes. It was a show from, last year? On
Or 2 years ago,
H2?
maybe?
It aired on
History Channel
H2.
H2.
Yes, heaven help us. It starred what was he calling
Forensic
himself?
geologist. He actually was one. He didn't just call himself that.
Scott Walter. And dear Mr. Walter had a theory. And this was a through line that ran through every episode, all the way from, American Stonehenge to Bigfoot. Okay? That the Templars got here well before Columbus. That there was a European presence in the New World before Columbus, and the history we learned in school, all lies. All lies, designed to hide the real truth. So every episode, we would get a letter or a text or an email from someone.
Yes, he got tips.
Yes, he got tips. And he would go to a museum, because that's where all the
Straight from
secrets...
the hot sheets.
That's where all the secrets are hidden. Or he'd go to some, I don't know what to call that person he would go to, or that person, some kook's place, and talk to them about whatever their deal was. So it could be American Stonehenge.
Which I had some trouble seeing.
Yeah, it was hilarious, because you know what Stonehenge looks like, right? It's these big, tall pillars of stone with lentils over the top, big round circle. American Stonehenge appeared to be one rock sticking out of the dirt. And Crystal was watching it with me, and she kept saying, "Where is it?
I can't see it." It's like trying to look at someone's ultrasound. Like, I don't see it.
I don't see a face.
But I have to agree, this might make an entertaining.
It would make
series.
such an entertaining series of books, because you could have Templars riding across the American plains. You could have,
I mean, it worked out well for Dan Brown.
It really did. I mean, it could be something along the lines of, what was it called? The Dan Brown book?
Oh, gosh. Da Vinci Code.
The Da Vinci Code, only all set here in the United States. Because, nothing prehistorical in the New World happened outside of the United States. Nothing happened in Canada. Nothing happened in Central America. And there were no Indians here.
This is embarrassing.
The Templars and or the Vikings got here first.
Yes.
Because it was a Viking settlement in Massachusetts, apparently, according to Mr. Walter.
Wasn't it in Minnesota?
Minnesota too, why not?
Okay, on that note. I'm so mad you made that one of your books.
It was.
But, okay.
Come on, you'd read it.
I would, but I'd never admit it. Like, you all would never see that in a video, because I would never admit that I read it.
I watched every episode and clamored for more, okay? Because we would spend the episode laughing.
Okay, I think it's really best that we move on now.
Okay, what's your next one?
Okay, so to continue the international theme, my next one is a British series called Good Cop. And this is not just because of my thing with Warren Brown. Mm-hmm. It was actually a really good show. It was 4 episodes long, and it just wasn't enough. But it's about this cop named John Paul Rock Savage, who, in my opinion, had kind of a psychotic break, a la Batman, when his partner was pretty much tortured to death in front of him. And, like, the worst part was that the partner didn't, like, die on the scene. He lingered in the hospital for a while, and his family actually had to choose to disconnect him. So, the man really suffered, and John Paul did not handle it well at all. So, he actually becomes kind of a vigilante. Initially, he started just going after the people who were in the gang who killed his partner. But he is... it's really weird because in his personal life and his daytime professional activities, he's very confident. He's really good at what he does. He's taking care of his ailing father, and there are like these really great scenes with him reading to his father, and the passages he read from various books always spoke to something that was happening in the episode. But at the same time, he was devolving in a way. So by the end of episode 4, he had accidentally killed, because he was killing only criminals, but he had accidentally killed someone who was not only not a criminal, but who had actually tried to help him. And the last moment of the last episode is John Paul standing on a rooftop, and he just starts screaming.
Oh no.
And that's it. That's all you get. So he has now killed 4 people. His father is not doing well. He's having an affair with the father's nurse who is married, and he's got some issues. He's got some baby mama drama because he told her basically he didn't really care that she was pregnant by him. So she left town with her child, but when she comes back to town, he selfishly decides that meeting his grandchild might help perk up the father's spirits. So that's really the only reason he wants to be in his daughter's life now. So he is this very strange character because he, on the one hand, really gives a damn. The idea of people doing bad things is so offensive to him that he's doing bad things to correct it. So he, like I said, he's completely dissociated. And because this was a British television series, no one is safe. He could have died. He could have gone to prison. He could have killed himself. There were like so many different ways the story could have turned out. There was no way to know. Nothing that we had seen in those 4 episodes indicated how he would end up. He could get away with everything. We have no clue. But he wasn't like a natural criminal, so he made mistakes all along the way. So you had to imagine that those mistakes were going to catch up to him at some point.
I see this one really left you hanging.
It did. Yeah. Like when he's screaming on the rooftop, I'm practically like watching it screaming because I know there's no more. And I need more. Oh. And this show doesn't hinge on like visuals. It's again another great story with great characters. And I feel like it would be an amazing series of books. So that's the only one on my list actually that's not spec fic, and it deserves its spot on the list.
Okay. Well, I think technically all of mine were speculative fiction except for The Riches. Yeah. So
gotta have a token.
Yeah, Well, my next show, I have to admit, I did not watch this show when it was in its first run because I thought it was gonna be bad and silly. But I was so wrong. When it came to Netflix, I watched every episode. It was Jericho. This is a story of a nuclear attack on the United States that pretty much shuts everything down. And, a few isolated spots, people are alive and trying to keep themselves together. And it basically centers on Skeet Ulrich. I think that was the main character.
I do not know who was in that show.
I think the main character was Skeet Ulrich. And he was on his way home anyway because he needed money, basically. He was the prodigal son, a ne'er-do-well, who everything he touched kind of turned to crap. But he made it home just in time for the nuclear end of the world, as we know it. What can you do? So,
isn't it ironic?
Isn't it ironic? The citizens of Jericho are now on their own, trying to cope with everything. They have to find food, water, take care of the sick, and on top of everything else, eventually they have to deal with the outside world because they're not the only town that's left. There was this one episode where they went to war with a neighboring town, and the sheriff of the town, who was Skeet Ulrich's father in the story, Gerald McRaney, said basically he never thought he'd see the day when he'd be girding for war against the town that had the only Costco for 30 miles. And that used to be the big deal about the next town over. So as we go along, you know, they face the challenges of life. They face the marauders that come through. They make mistakes that come back to bite them. The show got canceled.
Didn't the fans save it? Like, they brought it back for one season with peanuts or something?
Well, yes. There was this line that Skeet Ulrich said to one of the people that would be dictator that came in. He was like, nuts to you! And sure enough,
they were sending executives nuts. Yeah,
20 tons of nuts, I think it ended up being, or something like that. It was crazy. It was some crazy amount of nuts people sent them. And that got them 7 more episodes to at least finish out that season, because they were just going to cut it off. But there was just so much more to be had, because it turned out it wasn't a foreign attack.
Oh, yeah. I vaguely remember that.
There was an insurrection in the government, and the factions of the government were actually firing the missiles at each other.
Ooh, that seems timely.
And Texas was a republic again, and they still had a nuke. And things were just getting completely out of hand and crazy again, and they cut us off. So for the political intrigue, for the survivor drama, I would love to see that story continued in a series of books.
Yeah, it was maybe a little ahead of its time.
It was. It was. Trump. Mm-hmm.
Oh, don't, please. Okay. So my number 4, this is, and there's some nostalgia at play here. This was a television show that I loved when I was a kid, and it was like, it's one of the few like true horror shows that I can remember on television. It was really scary, but it was also good. Well, not really scary, but it had scary moments, and it was really good storytelling. And that was Friday the 13th, the series.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
Which has nothing to do with the movie series. There is no hockey mask wearing serial killer. It is about 3 people who come into ownership of a store, an antique store, where the previous owner, Louis Vendredi, was selling antiques that had been cursed by the devil. And so each item, the new owner of that item would basically have to sacrifice people in order to realize some sort of gain. So I remember the very first episode was, it is going to sound really crazy, but I promise it was really good. It was a cursed garden mulcher. And what you would do is feed someone into the garden mulcher, and you would get out cash in the amount of that person's value as a person. So you want to feed a really good person, someone very caring, someone, unselfish, into the mulcher, and there were no blood, no bits, no guts. You just got out cash. And so this man discovers that, and he is pitching people into that thing left and right. It'd be
funny if he threw somebody in there and he got a quarter out. That would be hilarious.
Well, actually, the episode ends, because the things never end well for the people who own these objects. He ends up going into the machine, and all that came out was bloody bits. So he didn't even get a quarter.
Wow. Yeah.
So the show was on for only 3 years. It lasted 3 seasons, but there were still like 70-something episodes.
Yeah, I watched every episode of that show. I thought it was awesome.
It went into a weird place towards the end, because the show started with Jack, Mickey, and Ryan. Mickey and Ryan are cousins, and Jack was a friend of the original owner of the store. And somehow Ryan, like a coven of witches, made Ryan a child again so that the devil could possess him. That was odd. Personally, I would have
written him out some other way. But you know what?
Yeah.
American shows don't handle cast changes very well. So, for whatever
the new
reason,
guy who replaced him, Johnny,
yeah,
no offense to the actor, but he just never had the right chemistry with the other 2 principals.
Yeah, and there was always a will they, won't they sort of thing between Mickey and Ryan, which was kind of forbidden
weird
love because they're cousins. I don't know if they were like first cousins, but so it wouldn't, there was always those kinds of issues. And the new guy coming in, I don't know, he just didn't quite
He was
fit.
just kind of bland.
Yeah, he didn't quite fit into the whole process. And where was he all this other, that was the other problem.
But he wasn't, Yeah, I don't even know who he was. I don't know why he got added.
Where was he all this time? If he was a relative, where was he?
But I think that show is one that would particularly modernize well. So you could have someone maybe selling objects on the internet instead of, in a store. Literally.
Because remember the episode where they talked about the vault being almost full, that they had a vault?
Yeah, because the cursed objects can't be destroyed by any like normal means, fire or what have you. So all they could do was retrieve them and lock them up. And I think you could have like a new person with a new compact with the devil. And so you could also have kind of like this ongoing storyline of trying to actually track down the person who is overseeing these new objects being cursed. Yeah, so I feel like this is a great idea for a book series.
Mm-hmm. A million places to go.
Definitely. So that's my number 4.
My number 5. Also, another show that I did not watch when it was in production. I discovered it after the fact and loved it. It was Jeremiah. It was originally an HBO series.
And when you said Jericho, I thought of Jeremiah because I've always confused the two shows.
Yeah, it's easy to. It's the whole end of the world scenario and all of that. But basically, in Jeremiah, also apocalyptic. I don't know what it is. I have an affinity for apocalypses. I don't know if that's really healthy, but
that's not a thing I'd want to admit.
I watch a number of shows about apocalypses. I mean, Apocalypse? I'm not sure, but you know what I mean. Multiple apocalypses. In Jeremiah, there was a disease that killed everyone over puberty. Everyone who had gone through puberty.
I think so.
Yeah, everyone who had gone through puberty died. They just fell over and died. And these kids were left. The kids were left all over the place. But this particular group of children that we followed were children of government officials, and they were all in this safe place where government officials had taken themselves and their children to hide inside a mountain. And eventually the disease got the adults there too. And there was one child who was older than the rest, but had not gone. He was a late bloomer, thank God. And he was about 13 years old and hadn't gone through puberty yet. One man's problem. Anyway, so since he's the oldest, all the children follow him. So we follow them. It's years later. He's an adult now. And he's still pretty much in charge of the place. And they are looking for survivors, trying to take care of themselves, trying to bring back the world. And there's a little tiny secret. Down in the basement, in a cell, is the last adult on the planet.
I did not know that part.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Spoiler alert.
And is that person immune, or they just never contracted
She has the disease, but it didn't kill her. She's a carrier.
She's a carrier.
Yes, she is. And he's been taking care of her all this time, and he has fallen in love with her. But, they can never touch her or anything because,
Yeah, I was about to say, she's like kind of a threat to all of these children now who have aged.
Well, here's the thing. We don't know, because we don't know if they survived because of something that wasn't present in their bodies because they hadn't gone through puberty yet, or because children are immune, and if you grow up, that immunity continues. But she's very dangerous to be around because no one knows. So Jeremiah lasted several seasons, and we go through all the permutations, everything you can think of. We're trying to develop a cure. We're trying to develop communications with other humans. We have to fight off these bad people. We have internal struggles because, they were all used to following the old, I forgot what his name was. Let's call him Greg. They're used to following Greg's orders because he was the oldest and everyone looked to him. But now everyone has grown up and they're developing a new style of government where Greg just isn't the one in charge. They're trying to develop a council where they run things a little bit more democratically. All in all, the ending for me, I knew it was coming. It was a little sad. It was, because I felt like they had more story, but they got canceled. So they had to kind of just wrap everything up. So they dealt with the woman who was left. She was the last of the old world. They pretty much said, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. Bye. Meanwhile, I wanted to know what kind of, because they were trying to put back together a government of some kind. What kind of government was it going to be? how were they going to spread this new idea? How they're gonna deal with the little tin pot dictators that had sprung up like weeds all over the place? You know, was Greg ever gonna get a new girlfriend? Because there was a girl that was pining for him, but hard. Oh my God, that girl could pine like a champ. But he had eyes for no one but this old lady he could never touch.
Therein lies the rub.
Yeah.
Or
no rubbing at all.
Okay. On that note, my last one, again, it might have just been me. This was actually a mini-series that aired on Sci-Fi Channel in, I think, 2006. And it was called The Lost Room. Did you watch that one?
Never even heard of that one.
It was actually really, really good. There were 3 2-hour episodes. And apparently there was this hotel where some sort of apparently supernatural event happened, and one of the rooms disappears from our space-time. Oh. If you have the key to the room, you can make any door in the world open to the Lost Room.
You know, I don't watch it, but I vaguely remember ads about it. Yeah.
So there's a detective who is actually played by Peter Krause, whose daughter goes into the room. Next time he opens the door, she's gone, because every time you close the door to the room resets. Because it turns out there's like a multiverse thing happening where there's actually multiple versions of the room. So every time you go into the room, there's actually a new room there. So he enters the world of what are called object seekers to try to get his daughter back. Because he's also going through a custody battle with his ex-wife. So he can't be thought to have kidnapped his daughter. Because right now the girl's missing and he can't explain that she's vanished into the multiverse. And he's also a police detective, so this would be very, very bad for him. And so any object that was in the room when the event happened, and we don't know what the event was, anything that was in the room when the event happened has essentially a magical property. Now, some of them are really cool. There are these scissors that rotate things, and you think, what does that mean? What does it do? But you could pick a person up in the air and make them spin around in the air. You can move heavy objects. You can make anything spin with the scissors. Then there are some things like a pen. Every time you click the pen, it produces a penny. And I guess if you have time, that would be a cool thing.
Okay, there we go.
So the different objects in the room do different things. And I think he had to find like a specific combination of objects to try to recreate the event and try to bring the room back to our space-time to get the daughter back. He's also searching for what's called the prime object, or the occupant of the room, the man who was in the room, the hotel room, when whatever the event was happened. Unfortunately, like, it was really, really good. It had kind of like this very dark thread through it. But the last half hour was a little kooky. Because, I mean, of course he gets the daughter back and, you know, everything's fine. But we find out that the man that we're looking for, the occupant, was not the original occupant. So there's someone else you have to find. And so we had this search, like the whole series was taken up with this search for this one man. And then when we find him, we learn that he's not at all important.
Oh, no.
So what I would do with the book series is just pretend that last half hour never happened and start from there. And the thing with this one, we actually got really close to having it continued. Buffy style, it was going to be continued as a series of graphic novels. One year at New York Comic Con, because we used to go to New York Comic Con every year, the Sci-Fi Channel had a panel about their upcoming projects. And one of the things they announced was they were going to produce 4 comic books in conjunction with an Indian comic book publishing company. And unfortunately, that company ended up going out of business.
Oh, no.
Yes, I don't know if that was specifically what scuttled the deal or if Sci-Fi Channel just lost interest, because I think they were also maybe going to do the show about the pie guy. You know, he touches people and they come back to life, and but he touched this girl and he can't touch her again or else she dies again. Oh. He made pies. I always called the show Ned the Pie Man, which is why I can never remember the name of the show. But anyway, so they were going to do Now, not remembering the name of the show is really going to drive me nuts. But they were going to do a series of comic books that continued the Lost Room story. So it wasn't just going to be set in the same world, but it was actually going to pick up where the television series left off. And it never happened. So this is the one that I got closest to actually, having in the real world, and it didn't happen. But I still think the idea of, I like magical objects. Mm-hmm. Friday the 13th the series. There's kind of a theme here. Yeah. Lost Room. I love the idea of this little seemingly normal object doing something so wild and so unexpected. Mm-hmm. And in the Lost Room, there was kind of like this cult that had become obsessed with the objects, because I think these objects also could not be destroyed. Okay. So I just like that kind of story. I'm always going to like that kind of story. The idea that just like a pen or a pair of glasses or something holds some sort of magical ability. I would love to see stories that featured a specific object and like the hunt to retrieve that object. He already got the daughter back, so like I said, I would eliminate the last half hour of the show and kind of focus on the search for the occupant of the room. And we never learn anything about what the event was. So that would be like the big mystery in the series. What was the event? What caused this? Could it be recreated? Could you turn any room to a lost room? Oh. Because presumably that would create more magical objects. So maybe there could be a group of villains who are trying to do exactly that. So
I would read that book.
Right?
Okay, so writers out there, right? I'm sure no one cares about these shows. It would be really cheap or free to get permission to write stories in these universes.
But the networks could hire writers. They could even start their own publishing imprints.
So let me do a rundown for you. The Riches, Joan of Arcadia, America Unearthed. Scott Walter works cheap, I'm sure. Jericho and Jeremiah. Please.
Let me do mine so you don't just write her shows. So mine were Charlie Jade, 3 Moons Over Milford, Good Cop, Friday the 13th the series, and The Lost Room.
I'll buy your book. Okay, so.
Definitely. So that's it for this week of Reading Babylon. Bye. Bye.